Hi, everyone. So we're NOlympics LA. We're a group that we're a coalition of organizations that oppose the Olympics because of the effects of police militarization and gentrification that happens in our communities. And we're going to talk a little bit about the National Special Security event today. We're living in a really scary moment right now. ICE is terrorizing our community, and city officials seem to be doing nothing to stop it. This is because they set the conditions to invite ICE to our cities 8 years ago when they accepted the 2028 Olympic bid. The Olympics are always given the National Special Security Event designation, and this designation basically rolls the red carpet out for federal law enforcement to collaborate with local law enforcement and creates the infrastructure for them to do so. We want to start off with a little icebreaker. Just with your neighbors at your table for 5 to 7 minutes, just discuss what do you understand about the LA 28 Olympics? What are the benefits that you see? What are you concerned about? What are your feelings? So we're just going to take like 5 minutes to talk about that.
So, what do we understand in this room about the LA 28 Summer Olympic and Paralympic Games? Anyone? It's gonna suck. What else? It's gonna be crowded, okay? Who else? It's gonna be expensive. All of these things are true. What about the positive aspects? What do we got on that side? It's okay. We can all share openly right now. The whole point is to just get a sense of the landscape. Yeah, go ahead. Sports are fun. I also agree with that. Yeah? Okay, so the possibility of building more housing, that's something we will talk about today. And for you? We've got international exchange, meeting of the minds, bodies, spirits all together here in beautiful Los Angeles. Yes, thank you for that. My name is Chris. Hello. I am a member of the NOlympics LA Coalition. I am also a communications manager at an organization called Strategic Actions for a Just Economy, where I work on the NOlympics campaign, and I'm an organizer with the LA Tennis Union. How many days until the 2028 Summer Olympic and Paralympic Games? Guess is totally fine. 900, 1,000, okay. What's up? 650. We have 979 days to go until these games begin. So just a little bit of an overview about the games. The organizers are anticipating 5 million attendees here in Los Angeles to view and participate in the events, with 12 to 15 million tickets sold total. A number that we hear a lot, especially amongst the organizers and elected officials in city and local government, is that it will generate $18 billion in estimated economic output. Now, that number does not take into consideration the myriad costs that we will also accrue in the region as a result of hosting these games, but that is the booster number that gets circulated a lot. We're also going to rely on 75,000 volunteers. I wonder if you divided the 18 billion by 75,000, what you would get. And one of the talking points that they share a lot is that this is basically the equivalent of hosting 7 Super Bowls a day for 16 days straight. Next slide. The games themselves will cover a 100-mile footprint that extends all the way north in the Sepulveda Basin up in the valley, down to Trestles Beach, which is at San Onofre State Park, just a little north of San Diego. There is going to be no parking at any of the venues for spectators. So it will rely on a very extensive Games Extended Transit System, or GETS, to shuttle people around between venues and parking lots. The Long Beach zone will be the second busiest area in the region after the downtown Expo Park area. And this is a picture of the map. You can see the full 100-mile stretch all along the region. And if you go to the next slide, that's where we are right now in the Long Beach zone.
Hey, all, my name's Eric. I'm with NOlympics LA. We're a coalition of more than 40 groups that formed in 2017, mostly fighting around issues of housing, homelessness, policing, and immigration. We're also part of the NOlympics Anywhere movement, which we helped co-found with some of our comrades in Tokyo and Rio and in Korea. And we're connected with all of the folks in the upcoming host cities of Milan and Cortina and various other places. Next slide. And one thing that we learned about the Olympics in our 8 years of studying and trying to understand it is that there are lots of negative consequences, even if you have the quote unquote good Olympics, that they talked about what supposedly happened in '84, which is not quite true. So gentrification and displacement, police militarization and increased criminalization, targeting of quote unquote undesirable groups, diversion of resources and hijacked urban agendas, erosion of democracy, and environmental destruction. All of this happens even when it's a great Olympics. So we've kind of boiled it down to a list of winners and losers. That's the easiest way for us to understand it. Winners include folks like politicians, nationalists, white supremacists, real estate developers, private security firms, corporate sponsors like Coca-Cola, who on the first slide you saw their advertisement was on the federal prison where ICE detainees are being held right now. That is what, that came from the bid book. That's what the people organizing this Olympics thought would look good. Let's put Samsung and Coca-Cola advertisements on the federal jail. Advertisers win, police win, the military win, the International Olympic Committee and National Olympic Committees win, and some foundations and nonprofits, the chosen groups, they're going to get lots and lots of money, and any nonprofit or other foundation who's going to say, hey, maybe we could do a little bit better with this Olympics, or maybe we don't want the negative parts, they're just going to get iced out of the game. But some select groups will be welcomed in, and they will get lots and lots of funding and create all sorts of wonderful things for their small group. Next slide. Oh, sorry, go back. Losers. Not how I describe them, but these folks tend to not benefit from the Olympics. Poor people, unhoused people, people of color, indigenous people, renters and tenants, workers of all types, sex workers, and other folks in the gray areas and informal economies. Understood. Small business owners, street vendors, disabled people, taxpayers, athletes, and transit riders. All these folks have negative benefits or negative things coming to them from the Olympics. And we can talk more about each of those after the fact, but we don't have time to talk about each of them right in this moment. Next slide, please. So the big understanding that we have is that the Olympics create this context and this need, this timeline for these winners to revitalize and cleanse a city. Following in the eugenic example of the founder of the Olympics, Pierre de Coubertin, who's a literal eugenicist. So what the Olympics mean? They want a clean city. What a clean city means is no visible poverty or political dissent, no conflicts with corporate sponsors who want to slap the Coca-Cola logo on the prison, for instance, a marketplace for global real estate investors and speculators. The idea is for large companies to park capital in places that will be hosting mega events soon. It's an excuse for them to make lots and lots of money. Next slide, please. One of the groups pushing this is the LA Sports and Entertainment Council. They want to make LA the sports capital of the world. Casey Wasserman, the chair of the LA 28 Games, is a member of the LA Sports and Entertainment Commission. And their plan, they are dedicated to hosting the world's leading sports and entertainment events in LA that drive lasting social and economic impact in our communities. They're a nonprofit officially designated to attract, secure, and support major events in the region. Casey Wasserman is also the LA 28 chair. And in his role as LA 28 chair, he talks about how it's not his job to solve homelessness. It's not LA 28's job to solve homelessness, but his other organization is demanding every mega event ever come to Los Angeles. Those things are in conflict. And if we invite every mega event ever to Los Angeles, we will have ICE here forever. Next slide, please. So the work of NOlympics LA is centered in coalition building. Building a coalition of groups whose work and lives will be affected by the games is our focus, so that we can listen to concerns, share analysis and information, and other breaking news for these organizations so they can incorporate it into their work. Next slide, please. Political education is a central part of our work as well. We often go to high schools and colleges to speak in classrooms and have conversations with students throughout LA County. We meet with other partners and groups in LA. We publish analysis. We host teach-ins like this one. And we have an academic syllabus that we've also made for self-study. And actually, that syllabus has been used in the UC system for required courses at UC Irvine, because someone reached out and let us know they really liked one of the exercises that one of our members came up with. Next slide, please. We are, as I mentioned earlier, we're part of the No Olympics Anywhere movement. So transnational organizing and understanding we are not just Olympic NIMBYs. We understand that if the Olympics don't come here, they go and do this harm somewhere else. We don't think the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, which used to include honorary members like, what's the golly? Yeah, Henry Kissinger. I don't know how I forgot his name. Yeah, he was a literal IOC honorary member. Those are the types of people who run the International Olympic Committee. So we connect, next slide, with folks in all over the place. But in 2019, we joined anti-Olympic activists from all over the world in Tokyo as they opposed their games. And we found a couple things that kind of overlap between these movements. Next slide, please. So shared political struggles amongst all the nations and groups that are fighting the Olympics. And I see some folks taking pictures of this slide. We're going to share this after the fact as well. There's going to be a video, but also we're happy to share the presentation. So some of the things we learned: disenfranchisement and erosion of democracy, privatization and financialization, mass displacement, environmental destruction and greenwashing, community washing as well, police militarization and surveillance, criminalization of poverty and informal economies, imperialism and nationalism, eugenics and ableism, sexism and reinforcement of the gender binary, and labor exploitation. All of these things exist when an Olympics happens. Next slide. So organizing with impacted communities is critical for us. We've spent a lot of time connecting with the Lenox Inglewood Tenant Union, which has members just outside of SoFi Stadium. And we've been, with them for 5-6 years now, helping to fight and understand what's happening in the shadow of the stadium. We also work closely with the Flower Drive Tenant Association, which is in the shadow of the LA Memorial Coliseum. It's 2 blocks on Flower Drive. 1 block has already been removed for an Olympic hotel that LA City Council approved that is now turned into student housing. So organizing with the groups that are actually going to experience this, like sex workers, like Sidewalk Project, that's critical to our work. Next slide.
All right. So when boosters say that hosting the Olympics puts a city on the map, what they really mean is that it puts a city on the map for global real estate spectators. Officials use the games as a pretext to spur luxury developments for tourists and investors. These developments are many times exempt from planning regulations that protect people from and the environment from bad actors with too much power. In addition to creating a timeline for speculation, the games have a long history of providing pretexts to displace and dispossess poor residents from areas targeted for gentrification. This happens through raising the rents, ramping up policing efforts, and using the Olympics as the rationale to demolish low-income housing and communities. This can mean they can destroy them for hotels, for stadiums, infrastructure, and transit. They also provide pretext for the enclosure of public land, taking land that used to be everybody can use it, now only people who pay for the land can use it. As an example, by 2004, so this was 8 years after the Atlanta Games, rents at Centennial Place in Atlanta had risen between 42 and 72%. And then in Rio, over 77,000 people were displaced as the direct result of the games, many forcibly and violently by police. You can see the picture from up there. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. One example of people fighting back here in Los Angeles against this very process is the Flower Drive Tenants Association, Eric mentioned, which is part of the LA Tenants Union. Sorry. So as Eric was saying, there are 2 blocks of tenants along Flower Drive. One has already been displaced. The second one is fighting back. These residents are fighting Ellis Act evictions, which are evictions that basically force you out of your home so that they can knock down your home and build new developments, build hotels or student housing or whatever else the development company wants to build there. This militant bloc of tenants has specifically identified that the Olympics and that USC, who is a booster of the Olympics, are the ones who are causing them to be evicted from their homes. They see all of these fights as related, and that's why we're organizing with them. This is the plan that was approved by City Council for Exposition Point, which is the development that these tenants are being displaced for. It used to be called the FIG. As you can see, it's pretty gross. It's evicting people who have lived in their homes for 40, 50 years to put in hotels. This project was literally approved to displace grandparents, single moms, and families with children so that people could have swanky new digs to watch the games. The plan has now changed a little bit and it has a lot of student housing. I do want to student housing isn't needed during the summer, which is when the Olympics are happening, which is interesting. Next slide. One thing that we hear a lot, which is kind of related, is that the Olympics bring construction jobs, which is good. But this is a good time to mention that these promised jobs that the Olympics and their related developments supposedly bring are usually temporary, they're non-union, and they're very dangerous. There was actually several people who died building SoFi Stadium. So families whose breadwinners were construction jobs are also among those who are more likely to be evicted. So just because the Olympics say that they're bringing jobs doesn't mean that that's going to be the best jobs for a community or that those jobs are going to help the community. And just like a few more words about Flower Drive Tenants Association, not only are they fighting back because it's their homes and they don't want to be evicted, but they're fighting to create a community that's a better place to live in and a place that I think of as kind of the alternative to big developments like hotels and like the Olympics. What we see instead of new hotel developments going up is people building a community where they do like community cleanup days and know each other and talk to each other. And that to me is something much more exciting and much better for our city than building new hotels across from a stadium. I also want to talk a little bit about the Lenox Inglewood Tenants Union, which is right across from SoFi. So near SoFi, the Lenox Inglewood Tenants Union is also working with tenants to resist Olympic gentrification efforts. The apartment building there, which was formerly called Inglewood Gardens, was purchased by Alpha Investments in the fall of 2019. They began by pushing out then current tenants and then started major reconstruction and remodeling of the empty apartments and buildings itself. And then they changed the name of the building to the Stadium View Apartments. But there were people who were still living there. And so what the landlord did to get rid of the people who were still living there, or at least attempted to do, was he illegally raised the rents after Inglewood had just passed rent control. He also just stopped doing repairs. so that people would be living in such miserable conditions that they would leave. And so to fight that, the Lenox Inglewood Tenants Union started doing their own repair campaign. So that's another way that people were fighting back against these Olympic gentrification efforts, coming together as a community, doing campaigns. So they did the repairs themselves and then deducted that from their rents. So that's kind of what's going on now. Let's take a little bit of a trip back to 1984. We don't have to look far to see that the Olympics have always resulted in tragedy for our communities. The 1984 Olympics are branded as a bright part of LA's history, but we're going to take a look at what actually happened here. So in the lead up to the 1984 Olympics, gang sweeps expanded into the mostly working class neighborhoods near venues. In these, young, predominantly Black and brown men were frequently arrested as gang members. Usually that meant being in groups of 2 to 3 people. And INS also was who was the precursor to ICE, started conducting sweeps of undocumented taxi drivers around LAX and those areas. They were also deported on being suspected of gang members, which I don't really think of taxi drivers as gang members. So that's kind of what the sweeps started to look like, which seems pretty similar to what's going on today. These sweeps also targeted unhoused people. More people were actually made homeless in the lead up to the games because of gentrification that the Olympics drove. Rents skyrocketed more than 50% in the period between 1980 and 1990, which meant that there were more people on the streets in the lead up to the Olympics. To respond to that, City Council, instead of doing something to get rents under control or create more public housing, they decided to prohibit the use of streets for habitation and bar people from using their cars as living quarters. And then in February 1984, just a few months before the games, they banned sleeping on benches. These laws were used to justify sweeps where people were forced into carceral treatment. They were arrested and their belongings were destroyed. And the same thing is still happening today. The Los Angeles Police Department Captain Billy Wedgeworth actually told the Los Angeles Times 1 week before the opening ceremony that they were trying to sanitize the area. Remember, these are human beings that they were trying to clear out of the area. And Gilbert Lindsay, who's a very well-known city council member in Los Angeles, recommended just relocating unhoused people to a drunks farm near Saugus to just clean up the city. So we're talking forced concentration camps and relocation of people just so that we can put on a fun party for rich people. The Olympics also directly led into Operation Hammer, which was the LAPD's attempt to once again crack down on so-called gang violence. There was, of course, gang violence, but a lot of what they were cracking down on was men standing in small groups. It was created with resources given to the LAPD for the 1984 Olympics, including a military-grade tank, to create what were called a permanent Olympics in terms of policing. So basically, people like Maxine Waters, certain nonprofits, and church groups in LA went to the mayor and asked, hey, we actually thought it was cool that everybody was just arrested during the Olympics. Could we have that all the time? So the LAPD said, sure, let's do that all the time. Result was Operation Hammer. The results were disastrous. 24,000 Black youths were arrested. And at the height of the operation, there were 1,400 people arrested in one single weekend. And in one start case, they just destroyed somebody's house because they claimed that the house was being used to manufacture drugs. Once they destroyed the house and inside, they found 2 women eating ice cream and a single dime bag of weed. That's what they destroyed someone's house over. These conditions directly led into the beating of Rodney King and then the '92 uprising. So down here in Long Beach, police militarization looked like new sniper teams, hostage rescue teams, which they didn't need, and over 100 military helicopters were on standby. Think of that, all of that police for what? None of it was used. A lot of law enforcement who were using all this equipment during the games. You can see there's footage of them talking about it in documentaries. They just used it to joyride during the games. They did not go on like cool missions or anything. LA 28 or yeah, LA 84 was the largest peacetime operation that had ever been assembled. LA 28 is going to be the largest. And just a quick aside, as part of this, Long Beach for the new LA 28 Olympics, Long Beach is getting a 3,500, what is that? 3,500,000. Can you tell me? Yeah, 3,500,000 Bearcat armored vehicle to replace their old one, which Long Beach does not need.
Hi, everyone. I'm Simone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. I'm going to be speaking a little about environmental concerns today. So in September, the California state legislature passed AB 149, which is the Public Trailer Resources Bill. And in this act, they exempted all temporary Olympic venues from the California Environmental Quality Act and the California Coastal Act. Both of these acts work to advance environmental justice by providing formal processes for public participation, transparency, community enforcement, and etc. And CEQA, which is the California Environmental Quality Act, also includes processes for environmental review for developments that pose significant adverse environmental impacts, which includes cumulative factors like housing and displacement, land use, traffic, and transportation. And the California Coastal Act also prioritizes low-cost public access to the beach. Next slide, please. So looking at these two maps, the first one includes maps of the Olympic venues in Long Beach. So there will be 7 total Olympic venues, 3 of which will be temporary. And the second map is a map of the California Environmental Screening Tool, which is a tool that measures the cumulative pollution burdens in different communities. So the red sections are the communities that suffer from the highest pollution burdens, the green being the lowest. So if you compare these maps, it's clear that 5 out of the 7 Olympic venues will be in communities that already experience disproportionate environmental impacts. So without these accountability measures to environmental protections, with these new exemptions, and to transparency, public participation, community enforcements, it's clear that it clearly reveals the capitalistic priorities of the state to fast track the Olympics at the expense of the health, the safety, and the stability of Angelenos and Long Beach residents and their lived environment. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the legacy projects that the city of Long Beach has been presenting. So the city of Long Beach has dedicated $187 million for 21 Olympic legacy projects. However, the majority of these projects surround improving Olympic venues and high trafficked areas for the Olympics. This includes improvements to the pier, the convention center, and the airport. There's a long list on this website called Elevate 20 that I recommend looking at. But only 3.5 million is dedicated to housing. And when you take a step further in looking at this project, it's only a temporary shelter for unhoused people. It does not provide any permanent solutions, and it really reveals to the housing crisis, and it reveals that it's an attempt to sterilize the city, to hide displacement and unhoused people. It's not a legacy project. So I ask you to reflect on a few questions as we're talking about this. Elevate 28, and you can locate it on the Long Beach City website. It's a very public website. So I asked you to reflect on a few questions. Who is benefiting from these legacy projects? Who are they for? And what things do you think your community needs?
So with those questions in mind, and also just to be mindful that we've shared a lot of information, and we want to give you all a chance to process and metabolize some of what has been presented already. Take it away.
Okay, the question is, what kinds of relationships, networks, and community infrastructures are needed to keep us healthy, safe, and stable? So we invite you all to discuss with your table group.
Okay, let's have some groups share back some of their findings. How about this group right here?
Thanks. I love going first. So in our group, we did sort of, if I was kind of summarizing some of it, talking a little bit of the difference between like survival versus like Olympics prevention. You know, that we were doing, a lot of our conversation was about how to make connections like in our community to become violence interrupters and provide community therapy. Like, how do you get, on a text chain with a bunch of people to notify if ICE is in your area? And, like that's kind of about survival, but maybe that's still not getting no Olympics anywhere, especially in Los Angeles at this point. So how do you find those like-minded people compared to how do you change people's minds?
How about our group over here? Anyone like to share?
We talked about coalition building, and sort of like where in Long Beach there are people already doing some of the work that could connect with each other. And then a lot of what we talked about too was sort of like taking care of your immediate community and like places like just your apartment complex, like getting super, super hyper local with it, and sort of creating these networks of care, can be really impactful.
All right, this group back here.
Okay, we said genuinely affordable and safe homes, efficient and safe public transportation, safe passage walkways, official recognition of community and neighborhood groups that are resourced to do already the amazing things they do, organized tenant groups, support for disabled communities such as accessible transit, language access, language justice, and low-cost quality holistic healthcare.
Thank you. This table, would you like to share? We're going to do it. That's a pass. We're going to go to this table here.
We had a lot of the same things that the last table did, but I think something that I personally learned here is that, a lot of these things like affordable housing, healthcare, these important things we need to survive, often they are missing from our lives, but like the most important thing is that we have the ability to advocate, because even if they take everything else away, that's something that you need to get those things back. And if it's there, then you can have a hope.
Thank you. And then this last table right here, we'll call you the bronze medalist because that's where you're placing.
We talked about 4 pieces: mobility, communications, housing, and food. For mobility, we talked about like parking, transportation, making sure those are secured when it does come here, and how that may impact people who are living here day to day. For communications, what does the alerts and making sure to communicate the changes that might be happening across the city when so many extra people are here. Housing, we talked about the idea of rent control, removing the substantial remodel eviction, and trying to prevent those things taking place, displacing tenants. And also food, supporting the food and street vendors here, and making sure that they're able to still serve and they're not included when they because often when they talk about street sweeping and taking unhoused folks off the street, they've also been doing the same thing around taco vendors and street vendors.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. How are we feeling? Depressed. Okay, how else are we feeling? Connected. Okay, I like that. Well, this next part is not going to be uplifting, but we do feel that it is important information to share and socialize because we all need to understand what is actually going to be happening here over the course of the next 979 days.
All right, so we've been talking about the Olympics generally, but now it's time for us to dive into the NSSE. So what the fuck is an NSSE? An NSSE is the highest security designation that an event can have. It is an event of national or international significance that is deemed by the Department of Homeland Security to be a potential target for terrorism or other criminal activity. It was established in the late 90s in response to the Atlanta Centennial bombing, which happened during the 1996 Atlanta Olympics. And there was a whole bunch of security already in place for those Olympics, and it did not stop the bombing from happening. So this is just simply not going to do anything but allow for collaboration between local law enforcement and federal law enforcement, which is not good for a plethora of reasons. So who is involved here? We've got local law enforcement, state law enforcement, federal law enforcement, and private security forces. This graphic over here is from the original bid book for the LA 28 Olympics. And as you can see here, there's a whole lot of people involved here. We've got FEMA, the US military, the National Guard, the Coast Guard. We'll get into it later, but the Israeli security private security forces are also part of the NSSE and something that we can expect here. Next slide. So how long does an NSSE last? Typically, the NSSE will start around 6 to 9 months before an event actually is set to begin. But in Los Angeles, we are currently under the NSSE designation. Mayor Karen Bass actually requested this a record 4.5 years early. And part of the reason why cities do like the NSSE designation is because it gives cities a whole lot of resources that they can then invest into policing and all of that jazz. So not great. So this is important because LA 28 is impacting us right now. The raids that we saw over the summer, that started over the summer and have continued on into today, are directly as a result of the NSSE. Because of the NSSE, we have invited ICE and federal agencies into Los Angeles and the greater Los Angeles area. And this is especially important because LA's sanctuary city status is completely overridden by the NSSE. We already have an office for the Department of Homeland Security, and all of these raids are being done in the name of white supremacy when they are, claimed to be for safety. So next slide, please. So what can we expect for the 2026 World Cup and the 2028 Olympic Games?
We can expect an expansion of policing. Every Olympics includes police seeking more people, more powers, and more opportunities to flex on their communities. So LAPD has asked for 3,000 more sworn officers, which will be right around the corner from you. LASD asked for 500 more deputies who will be here. I'm sure Long Beach is demanding all sorts of new cops. I haven't found that information, but I'm sure it's there. And this is, of course, more waste of our taxpayer dollars. That's not the most important part, though, because these things last forever. Before the Tokyo Olympics, there was a law that politicians tried to get passed over and over that claimed that things like a sit-in to stop an eviction was terrorism. And they couldn't get that law passed for years, but then they got the Olympics and that law was passed, no problem. And that happens in every place the Olympics come. Power players who want to do a thing use the Olympics as an excuse to do the thing they were already planning to do. We call that the state of exception. We enter a special period, just like right after 9/11. There's a state of exception. Now all the general laws and protections that citizens have, residents have, are gone. The same thing happens with every Olympics. Next slide, please. Here's a great example. So cops love the Olympics because they love overtime. I like overtime too, but I don't make what they make. Officers, most officers, and at least for LA, they live up in like Santa Clarita area. I'm sure the same thing is true here in Long Beach. And these people are hoovering up our resources and taking them out of our cities with them. So these quotes are from a documentary that the LA Sheriff's Department has on their YouTube now. This is the last scene of the film. And this man says, "You want me to tell you what about the Olympics? I made lots of money on this little thing. I'm going to go out and buy myself a brand new 450 SL, probably take my wife to Paris. All in all, the Olympics were a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it." That's what cops get out of the Olympics. Your tax dollars. Next slide.
So something else that we can expect is visiting law enforcement to come into our cities. This is so-called mutual aid, and in a previous NSSE, which was the Republican National Convention in 2024, Columbus, Ohio cops actually shot and killed Samuel Sharp Jr. in Milwaukee. And they knew that this was going to happen. They knew that bringing outside visiting law enforcement was going to result in lower accountability towards these officers, meaning that these officers just kind of get a free ride to come over to different cities and do whatever the hell they want on our tax dollars. What else can we expect? Further collaboration and data sharing between local, state, and federal agencies. While DHS and ICE already share information with local law enforcement, this will be even more pronounced. And we've already seen that happening throughout the raids. LAPD has been very much helping ICE throughout this summer and up through now. We will continue to see violent repression of dissent. In response to the raids that were happening over the summer, we saw some protests in downtown LA, and in the aftermath of that, Karen Bass was seen crying, essentially saying, "How can we be doing this before the World Cup next year? This is such a bad look for Los Angeles." This will continue to be the case. Another thing that we can expect is facial recognition technology. This is especially important because even within SoFi Stadium, they have a privacy policy where you are subjected to facial recording and facial recognition within 300 meters of the venue. And so this will only further police ability to track us, to see where we're going, et cetera, et cetera. And finally, we will see the further criminalization and kidnapping of immigrants. And one thing that I forgot to mention is with the facial recognition technology, Casey Wasserman has specifically said that he wants this to be put in place. And as you can see here, that is him right next to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. So he's got pretty deep ties to some dark stuff, and we don't want him having access to our facial recognition or anything. As we mentioned earlier, this will result in at least $1 billion in federal security agencies. As I mentioned earlier, the main reason why a city wants the NSSE designation is because of the federal resources that it receives. So, for instance, for a normal Rams game, the security would only consist of the Rams and stadium security, NFL security, and local police. But for a Super Bowl, which is an NSSE event, the event has the FBI, DHS, Secret Service, and all of those agencies, for better or for worse.
So as we've been discussing throughout the presentation today, we do anticipate that this is going to hit members of the unhoused community especially hard. The individual that Olive Tina mentioned earlier, Samuel Sharp Jr., who was killed at the 2024 Republican National Convention, was an unhoused person. He was a leader in the community there, and he was experiencing a mental health crisis when he was shot by an out-of-state officer. We also know 77,000 people were displaced in Rio, 20,000 people were displaced and sometimes deported in the lead up to Paris. And the LAPD has already promised that because of the World Cup and Olympics, extensive sweeps of unhoused encampments are going to be happening at least twice a week in the coming years. And that was something we saw this summer in July at the compound. Also, if you know the organization Aetna Street Solidarity, they were very engaged in the organizing there, and that encampment was swept in July. It's not too far from the Sepulveda Basin venue site. So especially encampments and communities that are near the venues, we anticipate to be hit the hardest.
All right. This one, sometimes people, because there's a lot of misinformation in the press, have a hard time wrapping their head around. So the reality is there's a lot of misinformation about sex work and sex trafficking around the Olympics. Sensationalist headlines regarding human trafficking statistics are frequently exaggerated and used as an excuse to further criminalize vulnerable groups. Every year around the Super Bowl and other major sporting events, law enforcement claims that increased police presence is necessary to combat sex trafficking at major sporting events. But there's no evidence that sex trafficking or even sex work increases around the times of mega events. The Global Alliance Against Trafficking Women, GAATW, looked at 7 large sporting events, including Super Bowl 2011, 2009, and 2008. During these events, the media predicted anywhere between 10,000 to 100,000 sex workers and trafficked people would increase in the city. But the actual outcomes showed that there was no such influx. The study showed that trafficking doesn't increase around these short-term events because short-term events are just not likely to be profitable for sex workers. Large sporting events also just are not only attended by men, and men are the ones who are usually using the service of sex workers. Police are more likely to arrest somebody for solicitation, which results in fines and legal fees, jail time, and lost revenue than they are to save somebody from a sex trafficker. This is true not just of people who are doing sex work as you can do any job under capitalism, but also people who are being sex trafficked. The police, when they arrest somebody who's being sex trafficked, don't connect them to resources. They just give them a criminal record that makes it harder for them to get out of doing sex work or out of the control of whoever is trafficking them and make it harder for them to get other employment later on. Going back to 1984 briefly, you can see how the rhetoric around all this has changed over the last 40 years. If you look at those pins, they say things like pimp busters and whore busters, and it's just really gross to say that about arresting anybody. The police are still using the same tactics that they used in the 80s with some like small exceptions, but now they have to sell it as we're trying to save people. But the reality is they're using the same tactics as they did when they were calling people whores and saying that they were pimp busters. So, you know, police don't change. Thanks you.
So will it really be that bad? Does anyone know who this man is on the screen? I've never seen him before. I'm told that he is our president. He has also designated himself the emperor of the Olympics. Not only does he possess maximal oversight via the NSSE security designation, but he also created a new task force for security that he is the chairperson of. This involves the coordination of several federal agencies and will be a more performative public-facing iteration of everything that the NSSE is doing behind closed doors. We're told that this task force will be disbanded by the end of 2028. That's also an election year. It's unclear whether any of this will come to pass. Next slide. So this is our games plan. And one of the things that concerns us most is specifically the impact on the communities around the venue sites, which you can see in this slide. Now, just for the record, nothing I'm sharing is publicly confirmed information. This is all our best guesstimate based on different conversations that we've had with individuals across the city. So when LA28 comes at us with a press embargo, we're going to say, this isn't confirmed. We're just putting 2 and 2 together. Next slide. So the games are going to rely heavily on security perimeters established around each of the venue sites. Right here is Long Beach. That little square is the temporary venue that they are going to construct for beach volleyball. The inner purple dotted line is functionally the inner perimeter. These are the zones closest to the venues. No vehicles will be able to enter these zones unless they are official LA28 vehicles. And in order to pass through this threshold, you will need to likely get a TSA style body scan, what they call mag and bag, when you go to airport security and pose like this and they see everything. And that's for anyone who's entering that zone. Now, the thing that is especially concerning is we have reason to believe that these zones may extend outward for several blocks into adjacent neighborhoods. Next slide. In the outer perimeter, the orange dotted line, residents and workers will likely need permits to access the area with their cars. So you will need to have official business or residence in that zone in order to cross it with a vehicle. On foot, you should not have a problem, but all of your vehicles are going to be subject to screening by DHS for 2 to 3 months in the summer of 2028. And that doesn't just include passenger vehicles. It includes trains, metro buses, ambulances, police cars, etc. Now, back one slide. Now, just for context, around a single venue, that zone may be relatively contained, but when you start piecing together multiple venues and looking at the sort of bigger extension outward, we can see that this is going to have an impact on a pretty substantial portion of Long Beach downtown. Allegedly. Next slide.
So you might have trouble getting to your home near the venue, but I'll tell you who won't have trouble getting to the venue, and that's rich people and VIPs. Archer Aviation is an official LA28 sponsor, and they do eVTOLs or helicopter taxis, however you want to call them. So they're the official LA28 provider of helicopter taxis, and they will be polluting and surveilling communities throughout Los Angeles. They like to put cameras on the front of their vehicles, and through this exclusive partnership specific to the U.S. territory, the two, oh, sorry, that's about Palantir, my bad. Anyways, Archer Aviation is a partner of Palantir, which is, yes, the evil data and AI company, and they have an exclusive partnership to integrate Archer's systems with their systems. So, next slide, please. Yeah, that partnership was announced a little bit earlier this year. And, you know, Palantir has a long history of working with both ICE, the US government, and the Israeli Defense Forces, and they've got a lot of different government contracts. And actually, go back to the last slide because I forgot to explain the image there. This week, Archer Aviation bought Hawthorne Municipal Airport for $127 million. Each one of the venues, they're going to be building helicopter pads and little spots for takeoff and landing. And they're thinking Hawthorne Airport will be their center of all of that. And I thought I put a quote in here. Hold on one sec. Oh, right. Yeah. So their stock slid 8% after they purchased this airport this week. And they're saying in all of their press about it, the facility is also set to serve as a test bed for AI-powered air and ground operations, not just for LA-28, but for decades in Los Angeles. So LA-28 once more changing us for the worse forever. Next slide. Yeah, and I already mentioned the connections to ICE and Palantir. So next slide.
All right, so we mentioned this earlier, but Israel is involved in this. Isn't that horrible? LAPD has been coordinating with Israel and the IOF since the early 80s. In 2017, the 8 high-ranking officers went to Israel to visit private security firms, drone manufacturers, and to attend a special data conference. And this is an ongoing relationship still happening today. And Long Beach PD also has a relationship with Israel. Surprise, surprise. In 2018, a Long Beach Police Department applied for a DHS grant to send 3 officers to Israel for training. And this is terrible because what the IOF and the LAPD and Long Beach PD do is they exchange harmful policing tactics where, you know, the IOF has employed broken windows policing, which LAPD has infamously used throughout Los Angeles. And LAPD has adopted quite a few practices from the IOF. And even, you know, like the knee to neck chokehold that killed George Floyd is a tactic that is very, very well used throughout Israel. We can see here there's graffiti by Palestinian artist Takis Batin on the Israeli separation wall. And so our struggles here against police brutality, against police surveillance, very much tie back to the fight for a liberated Palestine.
So, for decades, a firm run by a former Mossad agent, Leo Glesser, has been responsible for mega event security. Almost every Olympics and many of the World Cups, I'm just going to read the list here. Mexico 86 World Cup, Italy 90 World Cup, Barcelona 92 Olympics, Sydney 2000 Olympics, Athens 2004 Olympics, Rio 2007 Pan Am Games, Beijing 2008 Olympics, South Africa 2010 World Cup, Sochi 2014 Olympics, Rio 2016 Olympics, Russia 2018 Olympics, Tokyo 2020 Olympics. So all of these events had security run by IOF-trained Mossad agents. The same folks who trained the Contras and various other death squads in Central and South America. They trained 10,000 men for the Rio Olympics. They trained people for Greek games, for stuff in Russia. So like Albertina was saying, they take the tactics that they're using on the population of Palestine, and they export them over here for mega event security. And then they refine them here in the Imperial Court, and then they go back and then they take what they learned and all the new investments that they got from IBM and all the different companies that invest in them. And then they go and they criminalize and do genocide in Palestine even more. And then they learn more, and it's a cycle, and they just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Next slide. Thinking about that transfer of knowledge that goes back and forth and in a circle, are there any connections that we can see between the occupation of Palestine and things folks have experienced in their communities here in Los Angeles? Just take a couple moments talking to your table. What have we've seen? Masked agents kidnapping people. What have you seen that's similar? Does it feel like it's part of the same thing? All right, real quick, everybody. Anything else? Anyone want to share anything?
We talked a lot about just stripping people from their homes and from their livelihoods. That's a pretty huge thing that ICE is doing, that the IOF also does to Palestinians.
Great. Anything else?
We talked about how the connection partially is that some of our tax dollars, the statistic I used for Long Beach is about $6 million a year goes to companies in Israel or the state of Israel itself. So that is a point that I have used in organizing for this in the past, talking to everyday people, because no matter what your cause is that you want to have more of, some of that $6 million could be going towards it, and it's not right now.
The opportunity cost of hosting an Olympics is huge. Anything else anyone wants to share? So I just want us all to think about Peter Thiel, the owner of Palantir that we were talking about earlier. Just like Elon Musk, his family decided to move to South Africa because they thought the racism and apartheid that was happening there was so fucking cool. That's who those people are. And they have access to all of our data. All the cameras on front of those Archer helicopters, that data is going straight to Palantir. All right, Chris.
No, I love to follow up Peter Thiel. So what can we do? We can organize ourselves. And frankly, given the scale of this event and what we are up against in this moment, not simply in terms of numbers, machinery, dollars, but also I think the scale of imagination and how deeply propagandized we all are by the Olympics. It's a big fight that we are undertaking. And I think what a lot of us in this coalition have also come to understand, especially over the course of this summer, is that the more locally we do it, the more that we do it with the communities that we are a part of, that are in our neighborhoods, that are parts and connected to the organizations that we're engaged with, the stronger we can be to meet what is coming. And we are especially inspired by the rapid response and community self-defense work that has happened this summer in response to the ICE raids. Next slide. This is an organization or a coalition of many, many different organizations who are coordinating efforts really around the Southern California region and bringing more and more people into this work of hyper-local, rapid response, neighborhood-based organizing. Does anyone know, on average, how long an ICE kidnapping is taking at this moment in time? 90 seconds? Yeah, I've heard anywhere from like 90 seconds to 3 minutes, but usually not more than 4 minutes. So it's really, really hard to respond to this if it's not right next to where you are in that moment. But if you're getting organized and you're joining with your neighbors and with other members of your community, you can develop the infrastructures that allow you to respond, the protocols that give you time to respond and alert those around you. And so we want to close out this session today with a question, a conversation. The first piece, what have you seen your community do to defend itself from kidnappings and ICE raids that might help your neighborhood defend itself during and before in the lead up to the 2028 Olympics? And the second piece, what commitments will you make both individually and collectively to help respond to these threats as it comes closer? All right. We're just going to do some share outs. Would anyone like to begin? I'm going to go to every table again anyway, so.
I was telling them when we first started that I was actually doing my commitment like right then and there, because there's a group in Long Beach called Odelay that does rapid response volunteer training. And I'd been meaning to sign up for it and like respond to an email from them. So if anyone's interested in getting rapid response volunteer training, Odelay LB on Instagram, and you can sign up. And I think that's a good way to just have knowledge and know that if something happens next to you, you know what to do.
Our conversation was a little bit, I think, more heavy. We started with the idea of we feeling like, though rapid response and community defense is important, but the reality is it's not stopping people from being taken away, right? And what we've been experiencing is considered a lower level of what's coming, right? So first we kind of just sat with that what we're dealing with feels extremely overwhelming, right? And we feel paralyzed in that even as organizers, right? And connected to community, right? So we were thinking after we got past that idea, right? Because even I was really emotional hearing about the young man or the young person that was killed for a mental health crisis, right? Which you shared. We've experienced that with a community member just a year ago. And it literally in 2 weeks, it's the anniversary of his unaliving by the police in a mental health crisis. And we weren't in this ultra surveillance, Olympic shenanigans. You know what I mean? We weren't even in that space. So I think that once we get past that feeling of feeling paralyzed, right, then we move into what is the call to action, right? So for me, my question is, what can we ask for, right? The train is coming no matter what. So how do we lobby? How do we organize? How do we speak to our city officials to put protections in place, right? To kind of put something to keep us protected, right? So those are my questions. I'm not sure if that's, what more we can do, but I'm open to hearing what you guys have come up with.
Thank you. Over here?
I would say extending support to some of the undocumented members in our community. Maybe specifically, like I know I have the protected status, so offering support to people that I know, like for instance, like maybe going and getting groceries for them or being able to give them a ride somewhere. I think that's important, something light that we could do.
Thank you. Would you all like to share? You echo those sentiments. Perfect. Over here?
I think I monopolize most of our time talking about like just political education in general. As a teacher, I've had some success a little bit with like students, but like doing that with adults, I have less patience for having to, like communicate with adults and convince them of anything. So it's this thing about like book clubs as a way to, like change hearts and minds. Thinking about all of the just like adult soccer groups, I'm playing one, and think about like expanding that as a program of like who to get in touch with and all of the different sports, like how are we changing the hearts and minds of, rugby players and team handball as well. So just thinking about how to get involved in those ways.
Sports are a great way to connect people. That's sort of why we're in this mess. Over here?
Well, my table just talked about staying connected and making sure we come to more of these kinds of functions and building a community. We also talked how kind of scary it is right now and how we should absorb that but not disengage. But yeah, we talked about just staying involved, even though it can be a little disenchanting when you see a kidnapping in front of you. But making sure that although you may not be able to stop it, you're still there to witness it and support each other. And if you can't stop it, at least try to tell the person of their rights, of making sure not to sign anything. You can't stay silent, ask for a lawyer, etc. Yeah.
And then finally, this group over here. Would you like to share?
Hi, we talked about rapid response, connecting with our neighbors, getting to know each other, being really intentional about stopping dehumanization and being intentional about humanizing each other. Don't obey in advance. There's a book called On Tyranny. On Tyranny says, don't obey in advance and make eye contact are ways to resist tyranny. There's a book called Love in a Fucked Up World. It emphasizes what could go wrong in your groups and helps you create strategies to stay connected with people and overcome your conflicts or prevent conflicts. So keep educating each other. And there's another book, I forget the name of it, but if you read Love in a Fucked Up World, it refers to the other book that has the word militancy in it. So keep reading.
Definitely keep reading, definitely keep learning. And in fact, if you are interested in continuing this kind of conversation, learning more about the Olympic Games and all of their harms and effects, we would invite any and everyone here to join us at our NOlympics LA coalition meetings. We meet every other Monday night from 6 to 8 p.m. on Zoom. So you don't need to travel all the way up to Los Angeles to be a part of the coalition. You can do it from the comfort of your own living room. And we organize events like this. We engage with other coalitions across the country and around the world. We work on media content and propaganda and discursive pieces to explore this analysis, respond to breaking news, and do what we can to better socialize our understanding of these games. So if you are interested, please come speak to any one of us after this event and we can get you plugged in. We are at time now, so we are going to break. We are going to work on breaking down the tables in here, but I would invite anyone to enjoy some pizza and some of the other snacks that are available. And also, all of us in NOlympics will be around if you want to hang out and chat, talk more about some of what we shared today. We recognize that this can be very heavy. This is very heavy. And also our goal is to foster more connection and understanding amongst ourselves, not to leave us bummed out and feeling like, what the heck am I going to do? Although it's okay if you feel that too, that's totally rational response to living in the world that we live in. So thank you so much. Thank you to Long Beach Forward for hosting us and for all of the beautiful community work that they do here in this wonderful space. Would anyone else from NOlympics like to share? And of course, thank you to our interpreters and Mariana over here.
Yeah, I'll just add that, if you fuck with this message, you are an Olympian, and we're actively trying to expand the coalition so that we can connect more and more of these groups that are taking on these individual fights and unite those fights. So if you think there's an organization that fucks with our message and shares values with us, please bring them to us. Send us an email, get connected. We'd love to add everyone to the party because there's no way we do this without each other. And go ahead and sign up on there's a little blue child's iPad over there. You can sign up, put your information in, and we'll share all the things we're doing. We also have some t-shirts, free stickers, and all that kind of stuff, and some really great material on NSSEs. And we're also collecting stories about the LA '84 Olympics if you happen to have any relatives that were around during that time. So we got a flyer up there about that as well. Thank you all.